Welcome to Native Exiles, Alderwood Community Church's podcast, where we talk about following Jesus in the tension of being in the world, but not of it. And we are doing part 2 today of a just little 2-part mini-series, AI, Technology, and the Soul. And so if you didn't catch part 1, I'd encourage you to start there. But today we're going to be talking about more the personal side of what it's like to follow Jesus today in a world full of new technology, powerful technology that isn't always trying to help you. Sometimes it's trying to use you. And I really enjoy this conversation. I think you will too. Here we go. So Steve, we're digging into AI, technology, and the soul. And we looked at some of the kind of big picture trends of that in the first part. And I'm excited to talk more about, on a personal level, as a follower of Jesus, how do we navigate this? And it's been fun kind of interacting with people who listen to our first part, because if we got any theme of feedback more than any other, it was kind of like, you guys didn't really talk about how bad this could go. Like, you weren't nearly alarmist enough, basically.
For sure. That's what I heard.
You brought on a Microsoft guy whose job it is to like do this stuff. Obviously, he's pro AI. You guys were kind of like talking about how fun this could be. But what about the fact that AI could destroy us all and end the civilization as we know it? Like, it could be a lot worse than what you're saying.
You had a fantastic story about this that you ran into. You have to share
Right
that
after
story.
we recorded it. I hadn't heard about it when we recorded the first time, but I came across a news article that is true as far as I can tell. I've checked it as many sources as I can, where there's a new scam going on where scammers are using this AI voiceover technology that we discussed in the last episode, so it can mimic a real human's voice. So they're finding someone's voice on the internet, using AI to mimic it perfectly, and then they're using that to convince their loved ones that they've been taken hostage. So like this happened with a parent, a mom, got a phone call from scammers claiming to have her daughter hostage, and to prove it, they put her daughter on the phone.
Oh,
but it was
my goodness.
actually the AI voiceover of her daughter. So the mom is convinced it's real, gives them all kinds of money, and later finds out her daughter was actually never in harm's way, was perfectly fine, everything's okay. And so, I mean, there are some dark things that can happen with this AI revolution we're finding ourselves.
You know, another one that emerged, my phone lit up for a while. Some friends sent me this article about allegedly this Jewish philosopher was speaking to the World Economic Fund, which is some, influential world organization, and made the claim that we should have AI rewrite our Bibles because we are like God and we don't want to believe in myths and fables anymore. And of course, Christians' ears all over the world perked up at this outrage. Wyatt proceeded to do a little research, looked on Snopes, and apparently he did not say that. In fact, he said just the opposite. He warned that we could become thinking like we're like gods. But all the same, I mean, the alarmist thing...
Of course, this is like a meta AI problem, because it's a story about the problems of AI with some guy allegedly saying he wants to use AI to rewrite the Bible. But of course, it wasn't true. But the way that Christians found out about it was that real AI things were saying
Sent it to them.
These people are going to click on this link. So it sent this false news story to a bunch of people who opened it, were outraged. I mean, so there's a real AI problem in the midst of that fake AI story. And so I'm not as concerned today about the fringe story. Like, is it super freaky to think that some evil person might scan the voice of a loved one of yours and try to get your money by claiming that they could have them? Yes. I don't know how to solve that for you. We're not going to get into that today. I'm actually more concerned today about how we navigate this as Christians in just the everyday AI and technology things around us that are very normal to us even now. Not what's going to come down the road, but what's already happening. And I think that the technological revolution we're in is a unique problem that our moment of the church has to solve. How do we stay faithful to Jesus? How do we have a deep and abiding relationship with him in this new world where we're flooded with technology, we're connected in ways more than we ever have been, we're dealing with social media, we're dealing with, just the ubiquitous nature of screens and devices and everything all around us. The church has never had to figure that out before. This is a new moment in history that God has called us to figure out how to navigate.
It is, especially just being, alarmed by the idea that you just presented that we could be completely duped because technology can generate what absolutely appears to be reality. So you have the one hand, like the binary, is this true or false? But then, like, it's not so new, right? I think back to early in Genesis, like Genesis chapter 11, you have the Tower of Babel, which is, really built around a new technology. They found a way to make bricks out of tar, and
That's called out in the text.
That's absolutely...
The new technology of the day was the brick. And it let them do things that could never be done before.
How about I read it? It's right here in Genesis chapter 11. It says, they said to each other, come, let us make oven-fired bricks. They used brick for stone and asphalt for mortar. And they said, come, let's build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the sky. Let's make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered throughout the earth. Like, it's not a new problem. At least the part about us wanting to think we can somehow use technology to at least become like God.
Well, there's something universal there, which is we can solve our problems with new technology.
Without God.
We don't need God because
Right.
we can do it now. And so in their case, the problems were security, unity, what's going to unify our civilization. Like, we can now build these magnificent structures with this new brick technology, and we can exert power through that. We can unify our people. Like, we can do this with new technology. What's hilarious is to us, that new technology, like, what were they building? Like a 20-foot tall tower?
It was a ziggurat.
A ziggurat?
Well, get it right, Wyatt. Come on.
So, like, we would laugh at how primitive that is. But we've been doing the same thing ever since, which is this new thing that we have, these new abilities, new technology. Like, we can solve our own problems. We can solve our loneliness. We can solve our boredom. We can solve our productivity issues. Whatever it is, on and on and on. Like, we can take care of things. And I think that's one of the big aspects that we're going to need to learn how to navigate as followers of Jesus is how do we not fall prey to that utopian promise of technology where the good life is just the next app update away or the next version of the iPhone or the next output of ChatGPT or what, like, to not think that what our souls are lacking is something that technology can solve. That's one aspect. I don't know if you see that anywhere.
Well, I see this as sort of the confluence of two things. It's the question of what is true and what is false, but it's a particular allure to the lie that says we can be like God. We can make life work without God. And actually, we have to almost go back further in that narrative, right? The first instance of that is just Satan in the garden telling Adam and Eve, did God really say? I don't think that's what he really meant. So he plants the seed of doubt, and then he plants the seed that, hey, you can be like God. You don't need God. So that's what AI is to me. It's the confluence of those two things. What's true, and how can I get you to believe the lie that you can be like God or not need God?
And so that has been going on forever. There's always been new technology. There's always been new promises of what could be accomplished, ways that we can take care of our own issues without God. So whether it's the brick, whether it's the printing press, whether it's the loom, whether it's, like whatever. But I do think AI has added a new level to this issue, which is technology has always been a tool that we use. Mm-hmm. So that's at its most basic form, that's what technology is. There's some problem we're trying to solve, and technology is a tool given to us to make that problem easier to solve, to do new things we couldn't have done before, whatever. So whether it's a shovel, like I said, whatever the technology is, it's a tool to be able to do something. What AI, I think, for the first time has done is allowed these tools to not just be used by us, but to start using us. So, like, your phone is not just a tool that does whatever you tell it to do. It now is sending you notifications. It's getting your attention. When you scroll through a feed, there's a supercomputer algorithm that is expertly placing things in your feed that it knows has the best chance of capturing your attention, getting you to go down that hole, eliciting some sort of emotion in you. And so we're now living in this new world where everywhere we go, we're up against billion-dollar companies who have invested an almost unlimited amount of resources into manipulating us. And so it's no longer like, here's a new tool. It's like, actually, here's a new way of infiltrating your mind and your soul and your desires. That's a new reality.
And you're willingly going along with it. Like,
Right.
we love it. We love to wake up every morning and have a news feed that tells us what we want to know, or be on social media that gives us what we, are aching to hear. That's the crazy thing about it. Like, we're willingly, voluntarily stepping into this, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There was a documentary that got really famous a while back. Netflix put it out called The Social Dilemma.
Yeah.
And we can throw a link to that in the show notes. It's an eye-opening thing. But one of the best lines from that is, we live in this world where almost everything is free now. It's really weird. Like, not everything, but like, your social media accounts, Facebook, TikTok, they're not charging you money. They're not even offering a premium version. Everything's free. And the line that stood out to me was, if the product you're using is free, then you need to understand that you are the product. See, the companies don't need to charge you because they're charging advertisers to sell them your time. Like, you are the product. You're not the user. The people they're serving are the ad companies, and you're the one they're manipulating to get value out of to sell to the ad companies.
All the while, you're thinking you're getting exactly what you want.
Exactly. And so, I think that's the problem we find ourselves in, is there's no escaping this reality. I guess, one option is, the monk option. I guess we could go form our own communities out in the wilderness.
The Benedictine option, yeah.
Throw all our iPhones into a pile and pour gasoline on it, light it on fire.
I've thought about it.
There's days where it's like that wouldn't be so bad. But then you realize, okay, well, I need to provide for my family, I need to have a job. Most jobs require, email, internet.
And I like being able to call my wife and text my wife and hear from my kids.
Totally. So I think for most people, that cold turkey, we are just going to remove ourselves from this new reality. It really isn't an option on the table. So for the rest of us, almost all of us, we are going to have to figure out how to navigate this world. We can't change the realities that are around us. We have to build habits. We have to build practices. We have to figure out how we're going to exist in this world and still follow Jesus in it.
Well, let's underscore too. We talked last episode about this some, and it's worth bringing up again, the unintended consequences, not just of AI, but AI that drives so much of technology and social media specifically. Our show producer, Luke, was sharing with us some research he found recently about his generation, Gen Z, which is basically like 15 to 23-year-olds or something like that. And one of the things he found, a study from the Cigna Health Group, found that 8 in 10 people from Generation Z describe themselves as lonely, which is a huge uptick.
80%.
Yeah.
80% of people, I'm lonely, which is, again, amazing. You said unintended consequences. The promise of social media was we will be more connected than we've ever been. Like the things that have kept us from being able to continue relationships have been distance, have been, the inconvenience of having to be in the same place at the same time. Now social media is going to remove those barriers. So now you're going to have more relationships, more friendships. In reality, the exact opposite has happened. What you're pointing out, I think, is as I'm saying, we're going to need new habits. We're going to need new ways of navigating things. We're not doing so hot.
No.
One of the things...
Demonstrably, we're not doing so hot.
One of the things that I think is amazing is, we pretty much universally have recognized now that we're in the midst of a mental health crisis.
Yeah.
So this loneliness stat is one of those things. 80% of Gen Z says they're lonely. We're seeing some new numbers come out as students have gotten back into schools post-COVID. There's mental health assessments that are done of students, and a remarkable number, it's a tragic thing, a remarkable number of teenage girls are seriously contemplating suicide right now.
Suicide and suicide attempts.
Like over a third.
Yeah.
Just amazing, horrifying.
Yeah.
And I believe it is no coincidence that as you look backwards over the mental health trends that we're seeing right now, there's a very distinct moment where mental health issues begin to trend up precipitously.
Yes.
And it happens to be the exact moment that the iPhone came out.
Yeah.
That there's this shift that happened culturally where suddenly our entertainment, our interactions, they moved from the public sphere into our pockets. We became more isolated. We became we were no longer forced to go into social settings as often. I mean, you think about even like just the shift that's happening from where you get entertainment content or even where you get news content. So primarily before the iPhone, before the spread of the internet, if you wanted news content, you probably were getting it from a newspaper or a cable news channel of some kind. And there were like 3 news channels.
Yes, I remember.
And so what that meant was we were having these social experiences where we're all kind of reading the same thing.
Pretty shared information.
We're seeing the same shows.
Yep.
Because you have to go get it from a television screen or from a newspaper or whatever. Think about entertainment. Like shows were released once a week. And we had this
on 3 networks.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember even as a high school student in the late 2000s, The Office was this cultural touchstone, right? Where like every Friday night a new Office episode dropped, and I knew everyone was watching it. We'd have parties, we'd all sit in the living room, we'd watch together. So you think about what that does, like it's a shared experience. It brings people together. The next day, the next Monday, you're sharing your favorite moments with each other, and there's this communal thing happening. When the iPhone went into our pocket, that communal experience went away. Like now shows, actually Apple TV has started to bring this back, but for a long time, whole seasons drop at once.
Right.
You don't have the communal experience of all seeing it at the same time. You're choosing what you want to watch, when you want to watch it.
You binge watch it.
It's different from anyone else. Same like music is this way. It used to be on the radio. We would all be listening to the same things. Now we're on Spotify. We create our own playlists. We listen to our own artists. Like we don't have that communal experience with everyone at the same time. News, we've fractured the news world where now like you find the one source that's your exact version of your politic, where it's exactly as conservative or exactly as liberal as you want it to be, and you get it from that. And so everything has started to divide us more. And I don't think that's a coincidence that we've seen huge upticks in depression, in anxiety, in loneliness, in all of that. We are creating a world that is breeding that, in my mind.
Just quick props to Spotify, because, we do have to at least recognize the incredible, awesome power of AI. I love my Spotify because I go on there and it figures out what I like. It actually feeds me music. So again, there's some awesome things about AI. But back to your point, like I think there was, a marked uptick in depression, as you were saying, even suicide with the advent of the iPhone. But it got even worse. And like researchers like Jonathan Haidt point this out very convincingly, like in about 2013, which was, if I'm not mistaken, the advent of Instagram. Mm-hmm. And, it was that I'm not only going to withdraw into my technology, I'm going to withdraw into this world where all I'm doing is measuring my own social bank account. How am I doing? How many likes? How many people don't even pay attention? And we not only got more withdrawn from connecting with other people, we got more focused on ourselves. And that has really caused a huge uptick in depression and loneliness.
And not just focus on ourselves, but I think another thing happened there where we became less integrated people. So one of the things of what it means to be whole and healthy mentally, spiritually, is real authenticity in relationships where people see you for how you really are and people know you for how you really are and they accept you even with your flaws and even with your problems. And that's been a problem forever. It's not like social media invented the idea of kind of putting on a show for people, pretending to be one thing in public. And like that's always been a thing. But what social media did is it just turned that up to 10, where now I can carefully curate the public version of myself that I'm putting out there. I can use Instagram filters to make it look exactly how I want it to. I can edit out every negative thing about me or every bad experience. So I can really have this massive gap between who I really am and who I'm appearing to be. And then at the same time, you're seeing not the real version of everyone else. You're seeing their carefully curated public version of themselves, and you're going to compare the real version of who you are against the fake version of who everyone else is, and you never measure up. And so especially for teenagers, where you're at a time in your development where social acceptance is maybe the most important thing, it is more difficult to find that than it's ever been because it's much harder to be real with people than it's ever been. I guess at the very least, Steve.
Have we adequately painted a dark enough picture now, Wyatt?
We're not going to be able to be accused of being too positive anymore. That was our big
We're
goal.
not Pollyanna anymore. Okay.
And so before we depress anybody more, I hope we've made a compelling case. There are huge problems. So we did say we want to talk about how to navigate it. And so maybe as we come back in this second part, let's get into that. There's huge problems. They're everywhere. As followers of Jesus, how do we get through it?
Let's do it. Okay, Wyatt, I can't stop thinking about what you said there a minute ago. That was actually really profound. I mean, I think you got to kind of the crux of the issue, which is that our desire with social media in particular, this aspect of technology, is to take ourselves and make a fake self to impress everybody else. And then we compare ourselves against everybody else's fake self, and we're always depressed, but it's not reality. Neither side of it is reality. I mean, that is a shocking picture you painted there, and I think it's really accurate.
And I mean, we all know deep down it's not good. We all, like, I don't think there's anyone who is, leaning into that, putting
No one's going to say it straight up like that.
No one is finding deep, meaningfully satisfaction, like community. Like no one's getting that from that social media interaction where, I'm putting a fake version of myself out. I'm looking at your fake version. Like no, we get it as broken. And even, outside of the church, there's been some movements against that. So, for a long time, like hashtag no filter on Instagram. I'm not going to use the fake filter. Like, this is the real me. No makeup on, no whatever. And I'm going to put posts out of me doing normal things. It's not going to be my beautiful plate of food at the 5-star restaurant or me at Disneyland. It's going to be me on the floor doing laundry because I'm a normal person. This is my authentic self. And that has been more popular. But if we're honest, like, even that is just a fake version of authenticity.
Right.
That's like mimicking a real life,
Because I didn't put a clip of me screaming at my kids or
right.
watching something on the internet that I shouldn't have watched. I mean, we're not going to put that out there.
No one's going to post on Instagram, like, no filter, real life. I watched porn last night for the 7th time in a row and I hate myself. Yeah. Like, there's that real life is actually not happening. We're faking even that. There's a new app that is an alternative social media in some ways called Be Real. And,
my daughters love it.
The theory is you get one notification a day, one opportunity, wherever you are, take a selfie of that, take a photo of what you're experiencing in that moment. And the idea is like you can't plan ahead, you don't know when it's coming, you don't get to retake it, it's just you, real life, in the moment. I think that's awesome, I'm all for it.
It's super fun.
But even then, you are absolutely going to filter what you let people into in that way of your life. You're not going to post the hardest things. You're not going to post the ugliness of your own heart, of your relationships that are falling apart, whatever. And so as we think about how to navigate this very real problem as followers of Jesus, I mean, the most profound thing that Jesus offers us is so simple. It's community. It is real life, embodied community. And I think in this digital age, this is one of the just foundational truths of scriptures that we need to remind ourselves of. It's so simple and so profound and yet so easily forgotten. God created us with bodies for a reason. Our bodies are not some like unfortunate.
It's not an afterthought.
No, it's not an unfortunate part of this life. There's this very misinformed view that some people have that after we die, when we're in heaven, like we won't have bodies anymore. We'll be spiritual beings only. That's not true. God created us. His intent for us is to be embodied.
We were just reading Luke, right, in God's story. And I had never noticed this before, but I love it. Actually goes out of the way to mention that Jesus met with them after his resurrection in his resurrected body several times and ate with them. Yeah. They shared food together. It was an embodied experience.
And so many of the foundational Christian practices are that way. When we take communion together, we're eating, we're drinking. These are things that are putting us in touch with the physical reality of who we are. It's bringing the spiritual and the physical together. And it's so easy to lose that in our world today. And yet it's one of the things that the church gives us that is so needed. Real people in our life who are just living everyday life with us, who know our problems, who know our families, who love our kids, who ask us the hard questions because we can't hide as easily from real people as we can from people online. I think this is one of the things that the pandemic taught us. We had the period of time. For some people, it was a few months. For some people, it was a few years. For some people, it's still going, where we opted out of in-person church and decided that digital church would just replace it entirely. And at least for me, I can say, for a while, it was kind of nice. It was awesome. It was like church on my back deck with the sun out, cup of coffee in my hand, not so bad. But most of us recognize this deep lack there, that when you're not in front of someone sitting in a living room together, when you're not, at the park together and your kids are playing and there's awkward silence, there's space, there's the space for the Spirit to work, to put on your heart, maybe you should share this. Maybe you should confess this. Maybe you should say something to this person that I've put on your heart. Like, there's all these things that happen in real life space that just can't be replicated online. And so one of the practices of, I think, how we navigate as followers of Jesus is, in a world where it's super easy to avoid it, we should not. We need to get in the mess of real life community with people.
Yeah, and just to put a fine point on what you said a minute ago about embodied community, I mean, I've heard Christians use the phrase that you are a body with a soul. And I've heard other Christians say you are a soul with a... No, you are a body and a soul. You were always meant to have those two welded together. Jesus was willing to take on flesh. It's a good thing. But, even as you're talking about community, we talk about our church community, but I just can't help but think about marriage. And I know we've got single folks out there. I was single till I was 30. Like, I don't in any way want to denigrate, the single life. You're not living a lesser life. You're not less of a person. Jesus was single. But man, one of the things that marriage does that's just so powerful is it forces you to at least have the option of living in community, but also it forces you to live in real community. You can't hide. It's pretty hard to hide when you're in the same house, under the same roof, sleeping in the same bed. Someone sees all your good, all your bad, all your habits, and then you throw kids into the mix. And any illusions we ever had that we could play God get thrown out the window, because suddenly, like, a 12-pound infant rules your world. I mean, I actually think these are things that God has built into the fabric of reality to remind us that he longs for us to spend, by God's grace, we could spend 50 years in a marriage, and it's going to be hard. You're going to have to show warts and all. But man, he uses that to do so much good. Like, I'd rather confront my real self and do it in a covenant, committed, loving relationship than hide for 75 years.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of good in the fact that marriage forces that kind of thing on you. I think at the same time, because marriage and kids force that on you, it brings out some of the hardest things. It brings out some of your worst character traits at times. And I'm concerned for people who are in families, are married, do have kids, but outside of that have cut themselves off from community. And so
that's good.
Things aren't going well. Like, the marriage is on the rocks. The frustration with the kids is boiling over, and they haven't let anyone else into that realness of their life. And so they're navigating on their own. And again, it's that inauthenticity. Like, when they show up to church on Sunday and they're in the lobby, everyone's smiling or at least not yelling at each other.
Like they were in the car 5 minutes earlier.
Right. And so you can kind of fake it in the lobby. But then as soon as you get in the car on the way home, you're back to real life. Right. The anger's back, the argument's back. And what real community does is, like, as you commit to sit down around a kitchen table with 4 or 5 couples, some single people, people who have kids, people who don't, you invite them to see some of the reality, to speak into that. And we need each other for that. None of us can handle the hardest things in our life on our own, or even just with our own family. We need the broader community to help us navigate that.
And I mean, let's take a step even beyond community. Like, you touched on this earlier, just spiritual disciplines in general. I think things that Jesus invites us to do. I think about the series we did this last year on Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, where he just invites us into these sort of habits. And what's so important about that in this conversation, the context of technology, I think, is that we tend to miss that whether we realize it or not, we do have disciplines. Like, you are disciplining and creating habits in your life, whether you think you are or not. If your habit isn't to get up in the morning and spend time with Jesus, then it's probably to get up and read your news feed or watch the highlights from the Mariners game last night or...
Everyone has spiritual disciplines.
Yes.
If you aren't intentional about them, they will be formed by technology companies for you. So your spiritual disciplines will become exactly what you said. Alarm goes off in the morning. Your alarm is your phone. So you grab your phone to turn off the alarm. And while it's in your hand, you scroll social media, you read the news, you check your email. That is a discipline. You do it every day at the same time. And the thing about what disciplines are, they're practices that shape you. And that's exactly what's happening. Your practice of starting your day every morning by scrolling through Instagram or by reading the New York Times or by checking work or whatever, it's forming you into the kind of person who looks for those things to satisfy your need to be entertained, to feel valued, to, fill it in, whatever. And, I think of Netflix as the same thing. Netflix is a massive spiritual discipline. So what it is you have this spiritual need to decompress, to deal with the stress in your life, to deal with the hard things, to process them. And we have been trained when we feel that need to, we think we're dealing with it. We're actually not. We're repressing it. We're escaping from it by watching 7 episodes in a row of Property Brothers on Netflix or whatever, and that is a discipline that as you do it over and over and over again, it shapes you into a person who is always looking to escape those hard negative emotions. So disciplines are practices that shape you. Everyone has them. The first thing I would say to a follower of Jesus is you just need to realize you're in a war. You're in a battle. Like, technology companies are trying to make a bunch of money by shaping you and your disciplines. Jesus is calling you to some disciplines that he's going to teach you to be shaped into the image of Christ. And the Spirit is at work in you to try to make you more look like Jesus. That is a spiritual battle that is happening. And until you at least realize that's happening, you are getting absolutely destroyed.
You're getting played. And
you don't even know it's happening. But if you're not intentional, you will never succeed in any kind of spiritual formation because the power of technology is so great right now. It'll control you.
And I think one of the things we miss, I know I missed, growing up with spiritual disciplines, like the idea that perhaps you should spend some time in the morning with Jesus. And it obviously doesn't have to be the morning, but just spending regular quiet time in prayer or reading your Bible, listening to Jesus' voice. It was a spiritual checklist for me. It's like, this is what good Christians do. Like, just like you get the oil in your car changed every 5,000 miles. It was just something you check off of a list. And I didn't see till I got much older that, it has, again, sort of like consequences that aren't necessarily quickly or easily identifiable. I'd love to ask you, Wyatt, what are some of the disciplines that you've built into your life to just keep yourself on track, to keep yourself anchored in reality, to know what is true and what isn't true?
Yeah. I would say as I grew up, there were really 2 disciplines in the Christian life that I was taught: read your Bible and pray. Now, to be fair, there were others we just didn't talk about. Going to church every week is a spiritual discipline that wasn't talked about a lot, but it was assumed. But the big ones were, if you're a Christian, you need to read your Bible, and probably before you read your Bible and after you should pray a little bit, but really read your Bible, and that's how you're going to be shaped into the image of Christ. And that is so true. Reading the Bible is massive. I'm a pastor, you're a pastor. One of the things we're doing with our church right now is we're inviting our entire church to read through the Bible in a year. I'm a big fan of reading the Bible. In trying to navigate this world of technology, what I've realized is we do need some active disciplines. We need some things. I am going to take an action every day. I'm going to open my Bible. I'm going to read through it. I'm going to pray at this time. But almost before those can be successful, we need some disciplines that aren't necessarily proactive things. They are saying no. So like some disciplines, like fasting, for instance, it's not a choice to do something. It's a choice to not do something.
Yeah.
It's a choice to not eat for a period of time, to focus on your spiritual needs and not your physical needs. And in the technology space, I think fasting is actually a really appropriate metaphor. If you're going to create space in your life for some of the active disciplines, for being able to pray, for being able to read your Bible, you need some decision to say no to create that space. So for instance, you need to fast from technology. And I don't necessarily mean, you need to take a week away from your phone, although I think that would be awesome. I mean, one of the disciplines that I implemented as a pastor of students for a long time, we called it the spiritual discipline of airplane mode. It was, if you want to spend time with God, the first thing to do before you open your Bible, before you pray, is keep technology from interrupting you. So take your phone, put it on airplane mode, turn off Wi-Fi so that no one can come at you. And if you're going to read your Bible on your iPad, that's okay. If you have the discipline to do it, most of us don't. So turn on airplane mode on your iPad, but realistically, for most people, it means don't read the Bible on your iPad. Get a paper Bible that doesn't have notifications, that doesn't have other apps. Create this negative space where you're saying, for a moment, I'm going to do everything I can to ensure that the allure of my responsibilities, of the entertainment apps on my phone,
my task list,
I'm going to create a holy space where those things aren't here. And then I'm going to implement some positive things. Then I'm going to pray. Then I'm going to read my Bible. And so creating that negative space is an ongoing thing for me, but it's been one of the most helpful things in my life. Like, one of the big ones for me is I have just completely eliminated notifications from my life entirely. I do not let my phone interrupt me when I'm doing something else. And that seems kind of radical to a lot of people. Like, just so people understand what I'm saying, I mean, like, even text messages. If you text me, nothing goes off on my phone. There's no red circle over the messaging app. There's no sound. It doesn't buzz. I know nothing of the text that you have sent me until at some point I decide
you notice it.
I should check my text messages. I've been off the grid for 6 hours. Like, I should make sure no one's died or whatever, and that is, as far as I know, a super countercultural thing. I don't know many people who do that. We have this kind of cultural expectation that we're always available all the time by text. Yeah. But if I can just speak freely, I think that cultural expectation is insane. Like, the fact that what the norm is that we've decided that no matter what we're doing, no matter how important it might be having a heart-to-heart conversation with you. We might be recording a podcast. I might be counseling someone in my office, but we've decided that no matter what's happening, we're going to give permission to almost anything to interrupt us. Like, we're going to allow, the Angry Birds app to tell us that there's a new downloadable content pack available in the middle of whatever's happening in our life. So whether it's important, whether it's not, whether it's a news update, it's an email, it's a text, just on and on and on. And that is not a recipe for health of any kind. Like, no wonder we can't pray. No wonder we can't spend 10 minutes in a row reading our Bibles. It's because we've created an environment where we're just distracted all the time, and we've given permission to be distracted. And so that was one of the big ones for me, is just no more notifications. And it was hard for a while. Like, the fact that I had to break some expectations of other people, where someone texts me and it's important, or they think it's important, or I probably disagree, but they think it's important, and I don't get back to them for 5 hours because
they're really annoyed.
Yeah. And I had to accept the fact that I'm going to annoy people. I'm going to frustrate people, and it's so worth it. To be able to get some presence of mind back. So that was a big one. Even though I took notifications off, I also had to realize that the problem wasn't totally outside of me. It was inside of me. I had this impulse, this urge to fill any downtime, any lull in the day with something to distract me, some form of entertainment on my phone. So it's a quick check of email. It's a quick check of, the news feed. It's even just like, sometimes you just pull your phone out, you're just staring at the screen, you don't even know what to do. You're just like, I have to do something on my phone because no one's talking for the last 15 seconds.
How many apps do I have on here?
And so I had to realize that if I wanted to be the kind of person who prayed throughout the day, where it wasn't just in the morning and before we eat dinner, but I was in a constant conversation with God. I was listening. I was bringing things to God. If I wanted any hope of that happening, then I had to allow for boredom in my life. I had to allow for moments where I didn't have anything to do. And so I just went through my iPhone and just went scorched earth and deleted everything. Deleted every news app, every entertainment app, every game, my internet browser, Just everything.
You rebel.
Gone. And it was a new world because for the first time, it's like I'm bored. I'm in an elevator by myself. I'm in a lobby of a doctor's office, no one to talk to. And I pull up my phone and it's like, well, there's nothing on here that I want to do. Like, I guess I could look at my appointments for the next 2 days. And but for the first time, it forced me to stop and go, okay, I'm bored. There's nothing to do. I have, a whopping 4 minutes to kill or something like that. That was a moment now to pray, to invite God into that space. And it took me a while to realize how detrimental it was to my spiritual growth that I had systematically eliminated all of those dry moments by just filling it with my iPhone.
Yeah, I love what you say there. You touched on the issue of boredom. You could almost call it the spiritual discipline of boredom, which traditionally we've called solitude, right? It's one of the overlooked disciplines. There's a lot of other ones I think are worth talking about, like confession. The discipline of confessing my sins. You're not going to do it to just anybody, but if you have trusted people in your life, it might be your spouse, it might be a dear friend, it might just be a brother or sister in a life group. For me, I even try to build in disciplines, and I see them as spiritual disciplines, of doing manual labor. There's something for me, maybe not everyone, but I just think it gets us back to our basic embodiment. We use this body to do something. God put us in this world. There's gardens that need to be tended. There's trash that needs to be taken out. There's the joy of building things. I think about being out in nature, and just seeing God's beauty. That is huge. But all these disciplines, I just want to make sure we're anchored here in these are spiritual disciplines, and it might almost seem like we're on a tangent, but this is all in the context of technology, all in the context of trying to resist the lies of what's not real and trying to not especially fall for the lie that we don't need God and we can live without God. And the longer I've walked with God, I've had kind of a real shift in the way I view, my disciplines of godliness, which sounds like so holy and almost monastic. Like, to me, to follow Jesus is to be sane. And to be sane is to be human. And to be human is to be whole. And to be whole is to be holy.
Yeah.
And I don't think most of us think of it that way, especially if you do it in reverse. Oh, to be holy is to be whole. And to be holy and whole is to be human. And that is to be sane. And I just think we don't always see the immediate payback or feedback when we're doing these disciplines, but they really do keep us grounded. And they require a long-term commitment. And they require community.
Yeah. And I would say they also require a decision to start somewhere. And maybe we can just leave you with that on this episode of wherever you find yourself in this journey, whether you've never even reflected on the role that technology is playing in your spiritual life, or you've tried 1,000 times to, put your phone down and read the Bible and just have found no success, whatever. The desire is not perfection. The desire isn't to, check off some legalistic boxes of what a good spiritual life looks like. The desire is to follow Jesus, to take some steps of faithfulness, to create some space for the Spirit to work in your life. And so I just want to encourage people to start somewhere. Maybe for you, that is exactly what you just said, Steve. It's, this Saturday, I'm going to be in nature. I'm going to go drive to a park somewhere. I'm going to leave my phone in the car, and I'm just going to walk around.
And be alone with God.
Yeah. I'm going to look at the sky. I'm going to look at the trees. I'm going to remember that there's a creator who created all of this, who created me. I'm going to take some time to pray, not through a list of things, but just to bring my awareness to God. And maybe that's the first step of taking a step down a path of fighting against the tide of the constant connection of technology and letting that into your life. Maybe it's a technology Sabbath. Maybe it's saying with your family, hey, let's make Friday nights. By the time we get home at Friday, let's put our phones in a box and be together. And that's going to be hard for a while because, we're used to just being able to be off in our own little corner of the house and doing our own thing. And we're going to have to actually agree on one TV show to watch, or we're going to have to...
one game to play.
But we're going to intentionally make a step to not let technology run our lives. So maybe it's that. Maybe it's you're going to delete your Facebook account. Maybe it's you're going to take apps off your iPhone. I don't know, but whatever it is, recognize that you're in a fight. You're in a battle for your soul. There's billions of dollars, and there's technology companies who want your attention, want your soul to make money off of it. They're not run by evil people necessarily. This is the reality of capitalism. And yet, the call to follow Jesus is to resist the tide of the world, is to say, there's a normal way to live, and then there's the way of Jesus, and I want more of Jesus, and so let's go.
And man, you can't do it without somebody else, almost for sure.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to need community. You're going to need accountability. You're going to need encouragement. Man, Wyatt, I mean, one of the things I think people maybe pick up on the show because they've said it to me is you've been that for me. You're a great friend. You have been an encouragement. We get to just share our frustrations and our thoughts, and all of us desperately need that. It's not always easy to find, but it is so worth the effort, and God wants us to have that. So pray for it, look for it, hunger for it.
Thanks, bro. I feel the same way at you, and something I want everybody to have. So this is the last episode of our season, Native Exiles. We're going to leave people with this. We'll be back in the fall with more. We got a lot of plans for the future. I'm excited for it. But we're going to take a little summer break here, and wherever we find you, wherever you're doing, keep following Jesus, keep pursuing him. We're excited to be back in your feed in a few months, and we'll talk soon.
Have a great summer. Well, thank you again for joining us on Native Exiles. Wyatt, I can't believe it. We've completed 2 seasons, 40-plus episodes. It's been a blast for me. We hope you've enjoyed it, too. Hope it's helped you in your journey, your walk to follow Jesus. And we want to invite you back next season. Please continue to tell your friends about the podcast. Wyatt, I'm not real hip with social media, but can't you put a like on there or something like that?
Steve, you are such a good, you aren't giving in to the technology.
No, I'm not. I'm above that stuff.
You don't know anything about technology. You are above us all. Yeah. No, I would love for you to share an episode with your friend on social media, follow us on the podcast. But I mean, as you look back in the season, find one that really spoke to you and send it to some friends that you think might benefit from it as well.
And we got some great plans for next year. We're really looking forward to the fall. So we will see you again starting in September, and we'll look forward to it again on Native Exiles.